Hey everyone. A few months back, I had the pleasure of being a guest on the Deck Tales podcast, and that episode has just recently been released. Today I'm bringing you this clip from the full episode, during which we talk about how I got involved in podcasting, how I choose episodes, what exactly a sea dog is, and many other things. There's a lot more in the full episode, and I encourage you to check it out. Host and former cruise ship entertainer Sam Catling collects the wildest, most hilarious sea stories from those who work on cruise ships, naval vessels, ferries, and beyond. Find Deck Tales on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts, or at decktales.co.uk. I hope you enjoy the clip, and I'll be back next week with a brand new episode.
Ahoy ahoy to all you smooth sailors out there, and welcome aboard the Deck Tales podcast. I'm your host and captain, Sammy Catling, and this is where we dive headfirst into life at sea. From stunning destinations to unexpected storms, our guests have stories that will make you laugh, gasp, and maybe even shed a tear. Whether you're a seasoned sea dog or simply curious about life on board, Deck Tales is your boarding pass to a world of nautical narratives. My guest today is Mr. Rich Napolitano, broadcasting from Florida but diving deep into the past. He's the voice behind Shipwrecks and Sea Dogs, a narrative podcast uncovering history's most dramatic maritime disasters. He's part historian, part storyteller, and fully obsessed with life at sea. So let's anchor up and dive right in. Hello, Richard.
Hello, Sam. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you, my friend. How is everything over there?
Oh, going okay, as far as it can be.
You're from the Sunshine State, is that right? In Florida?
That's correct.
Yeah, I got that right. Do you ever get bored of the sun?
Well, I've lived here almost my whole life, and I'm still not used to the summer heat. Every day in July, June, I mean, even going back into May, is so hot and humid. Some people love it. They can't get enough of the sun. Me, I like the winters here are perfect. Blue sky, cool. You know, I could wear shorts and sandals and no issues.
In the winter?
No snow. Oh, yeah.
Fair enough.
It does get cold, but not for very long.
And whereabouts in Florida are you based? Florida is about the same size as the UK.
That's correct, yeah. I'm in the Tampa area, so on the central west coast on the Gulf of Mexico.
Right. I've only been there, well, actually, to do a callback, I was in Tampa when I ended my contract working on cruise ships with Carnival many moons ago, back in 2010. But I've been to Florida with my family for, I think it was about 2-3 weeks. And we did all of the parks, you know, Disney, Universal, and that was a while back. I was about 14. Oh, God, dear. So we're talking over 20 years ago. 24 years ago. Jesus Christ. But let's get into you and who you are. I discovered, obviously, like, you know, I'm not the only one doing what I'm doing, but in terms of other types of podcasts within the niche of nautical history, you are, would you say you're one of the top boys, or I don't know, how would you rate yourself?
I'm only aware of 3 that are even kind of related to what I do specifically. Myself, there's another good podcast called Beyond the Breakers.
Oh,
those guys do a very good job. A little different than mine. They have more conversations with each other, but they do tell the history and the stories of shipwrecks. And then there's one very good podcast, a little bit different, called The Mariner's Mirror. And that one is actually sponsored by the Lloyd's Registry of Shipping.
ooh.
They do a nice job going around interviewing different folks from the industry, talking about different ships and different history. But we're all a little bit different, even though it's all maritime history. So I think we all have our own niche.
Yeah.
My style is more narrative, storytelling.
Yeah, no interruptions,
I like to...
like you're going to get today.
Well, this is an interview. That's different. That's fine. And I do some interviews as well. In fact, my last couple of episodes have been interviews, because when those opportunities come up, I like to take advantage of them.
Sure.
And talk to all these interesting people from all over the world. So fortunately, I've been making some really good connections there over the last 3 years or so.
No, that's good. Your podcast, I haven't even said it yet, is called Shipwrecks and Sea Dogs.
That's correct.
When did you start your podcast?
It was about the summer of 2022 is when I really started in earnest. I had been thinking about it for a little bit before that. And how it really all started was I'm a big consumer of podcasts. I love podcasts. I've been listening to them for many, many years. And some of my favorites are history podcasts. I'm a lifelong history buff. I love history. It's pretty much all I read. I read, military history, ancient history, a lot of just whatever history I can get my hands on. A lot of times I'll just think of something, maybe a part of the world or a specific topic that I don't know much about yet. And I'll buy a book about that and I'll read it, and then I'll read another book or watch some documentaries if I can.
Yeah.
So I've always had this love of history. So I listen to a lot of history podcasts. And one of them is one of my favorites is Stuff You Missed in History Class with Holly and Tracy. Every once in a while, they do a little blurb about some shipwrecks. And they usually say something like, these are little stories that there's not enough to do a whole episode about, but we found it interesting. So they'll talk a minute or two about some shipwreck that was just found recently or something like that.
Summarize it.
Yeah, very quickly. And I just started thinking about that, given, everything that I've read in history, including war, all the terrible stories that come out of war. I thought there's more to those stories, really. No offense to them, but there's a lot that goes into maritime history and the events and consequences of all the decisions and what the people were doing at the time, what was happening in the world at the time, why they were doing it, decisions that were made or not made, mistakes that were made. So I started thinking about that, and I thought, that's really interesting. I bet there's a whole host of stories that could be told behind each and every one of these wrecks. So I started looking into it, and the first shipwreck that I really dove into was the SS Sultana. It was a steamboat operating on the Mississippi River during the American Civil War. It was right at the end of the war, and it was transporting Union soldiers that had just been paroled, and they were taking them north back up to their homes from Louisiana, which is south, for those of you not familiar. And it exploded. About 1,500 people were killed, most of them just recently released soldiers. So it's the worst maritime disaster in American history, and in terms of death. And it was just a fascinating story. So I bought a book about it. I read the book, and just on a whim, I thought, if I'm going to do a podcast, I'm going to do it about maritime history.
What is a sea dog? Shipwrecks and Sea Dogs. Like, I know what a shipwreck is. For those who don't necessarily know, a sea dog is like a pirate?
Not necessarily a pirate, but I would say pirates are sea dogs, but not all sea dogs are pirates.
Good answer.
Yeah. It's like, all squares are rectangles, but not all rectangles are squares.
Yeah.
I used to teach math, by the way.
I was going to ask you that as well, because you said you used to teach. And
yes.
I wanted to ask you, what are the similarities between being a teacher and podcast hosting or, running a podcast?
So a sea dog is just a general maritime slang for just a sailor. Anybody that's a sailor or works on a ship. It could be a pirate, but it could be anyone, even like yourself, that works on ships. So
is it
just
an
a general term? No,
it's not an insult. A sea dog is just someone who is at sea. It's a generic term.
Yeah, a mariner, basically.
Yes, like Kevin Costner in Waterworld.
Yes, just like that.
I don't know why. I think he was called the Mariner in the credits of the original theatrical release.
I think you're right. I think that was his. Yeah.
They did like a director's cut, and they actually revealed his name. And for the life of me, the name that they gave him has just gone out of my head. But it was some Greek mythology hero's name. I think that sounds about right, but I can't remember off the top of my head. But yeah, so basically, a sea dog is Kevin Costner. You've done 82 episodes, and you've been doing it since 2022. So yeah, you've been pretty much non-stop with it. alongside
Yeah,
your work. So did you is it your full-time gig? Is it your job?
it is now. It is now.
Oh wow.
Uh, so I became a teacher back in 2005. I had a different career prior to that in television production
Mm,
and then graphic design. So I've done a little bit of a lot of things.
yeah.
But I became a teacher in 2005. I taught middle school, which is for those in the UK, ages 11 to 14, roughly. And I taught science and math for 13, 14 years. And then I became the director of technology at the school that where I worked, and had that position for about 5 years. And during that time, I started doing the podcast. So it was kind of a hobby slash side hustle, but it was growing. And I saw in the future that, if I can keep doing this and keep growing it, I'll be able to do this full time.
Mm. I can see right behind you, you've got an electric guitar and drum kit, which when you are feeling stressed, is great for taking aggression out on. But
It is.
when I come to asking about music and your history research, does the musical background influence the feel of the episodes in any way?
Not necessarily. However, where the episode is and how the story is progressing does lend itself to a musical feeling. That's how I determine what kind of background music to put in there, when to fade it out, when to mix it, when to change it, or sometimes just leave it out completely. It depends. So I think just from a musician standpoint, just getting a feel for the style and emotion of the music and how it matches what's happening in the story.
Yeah. I mean, if it was a pirate-themed episode, you're going for a more "what should we do with a drunken sailor" type
Yeah.
jive. But if it's a more recent story, something a bit more symbiotic of that time, well, yeah, I guess you have to kind of pay homage in some ways to the style of music and when it was more appropriate, when that music was more relevant, maybe. But
yeah, and I think for me, it's more of what I'm discussing in the story at that time is sad,
yeah, of
people
course.
dying, then I'll go with some sad strings or piano or something like that, something emotional. Whereas if it's, the ship was being built and everybody was hopeful, then I have a little bit more kind of inspirational, hopeful feel to it. But I have composed a few little background tunes here and there, nothing major, and I wouldn't say that I'm like any kind of expert composer by any stretch. The theme song was made by Sean Siegfried. He's a really talented guy from Sweden.
Shout out to Sean Siegfried.
Shout out to Sean Siegfried.
So he wrote your song from scratch?
Yes, and how that happened was when I decided for sure that I was going to do this podcast, I started looking around for some theme music. And I couldn't find anything that I liked that was just kind of off the shelf, so to speak. But on YouTube, I found his version of the Master and Commander theme song from the movie.
Great film.
And it was really well done. So I contacted him and said, could I use your performance of this as my theme song? And he said, well, certainly you can, but if you'd like, I could write you something original. And I thought, okay, great. So we settled on a price for that, and off he went. I think it was within a day. He got back to me. He said, what do you think of this? And it's the version that you hear now. It was perfect.
That's it. Done.
At least the first one he sent me was the one that I went with. I loved it. Absolutely loved it.
Awesome. And it embodies the whole vibe of the whole Shipwrecks and Sea Dogs sort of theme.
I think so. It's perfect.
How do you decide? Because obviously I just go with whoever wants to be on, but you've got to decide what stories you want to research, what ones you want to cover. How do you decide? There must be so many to choose from. Do you know how many shipwrecks there have been documented?
Oh, how many have been documented?
Yeah,
no idea.
Ballpark figure, and then there's undocumented as well.
Yeah, I mean, tens of thousands, I'm guessing. I don't know, but I created a spreadsheet early on of a lot of possibilities, and I've done most of those at this point. But what I found was happening was as I was getting into this and starting to get an audience, people would write in or make a comment on Facebook or something, and they would suggest different things. Oh, there was a shipwreck in my town. Look, you might want to look into it. Sometimes those are great, sometimes they're not. So I get some ideas from listeners, but I also get people that want to tell me about their experiences. So I've met a lot of shipwreck divers, and had some really great episodes with them. And they have a network of people. So you should talk to this other person. So then I'll get to meet that person. So it really kind of snowballs from there. So whenever I have a chance and someone's willing, I do that episode as quickly as I can. The last episode I did, which is going to be released, like I said, just a couple days, a couple of guys from Long Island, New York, that found this shipwreck from the Civil War, American Civil War era, 1864. And so they told me all about that dive and how they found it and some of the artifacts they found and the research they did to try to identify it. It was fantastic.
What's the episode going to be called?
It's called The Adriatic, a Civil War era ship uncovered.
Okay, there you go. There's that plug. Has there been a favorite episode so far in terms of one that you kind of rubbed your hands together with glee when you were excited about the prospect of all the wonderful research you were going to get to do?
Yes. The first thing that comes to mind is the episode I did about Roald Amundsen, who discovered the Northwest Passage and the South. He was the first to reach the South Pole.
That's the name of a ship with...
No, Roald Amundsen was a Norwegian explorer.
The Roald Amundsen is the name of isn't it a company or is a ship? There's a ship called that.
There may be a ship, but
there is.
It's an actual person.
I'm going to Google it real quick. Yes, there is a ship. It's called the MS Roald Amundsen, and it's a hybrid-powered expedition cruise ship. So it runs on battery and I think a combination of LNG. And it's with, I think it's Hurtigruten, I want to say. Yeah, it's a Hurtigruten ship. So there you go. That's the tenuous link. Continue with your story about the man himself.
So that ship was named after the man, Roald Amundsen, who was prolific. He was the first to reach the South Pole, and that was a very close race with Robert Falcon Scott, but he reached the South Pole first. And then he found the Northwest Passage first, or I could have those mixed up. But anyway, he found the navigable Northwest Passage by sea. It had already been done over the ice, but he discovered that, and he was one of the first men to reach the North Pole in his expedition, and plus a lot of other Arctic expeditions. Really an adventurous guy, all kinds of incredible stories that comes out of his lifetime. And then he himself died in a plane crash when he was looking for an Italian pilot that was going to the North Pole in a blimp, in a dirigible. So that dirigible crashed, and Amundsen knew him because they went on the previous expedition with him. General Umberto Nobile is his name. So Amundsen gets in a plane with some friends of his, and their plane crashed.
Oh, wow.
So he was lost and never found as a result of that was the end of his life of exploration.